The CEO had no idea he had two daughters until they knocked on his door and said, "Daddy, why did you fire Mummy?" The 52nd floor of the Blackwood Tower gleamed like a monument to power. Marcus Blackwood, 42 years old and worth $12 billion, stood behind his floor-to-ceiling windows, watching Manhattan spread beneath him like a conquered kingdom. His empire, Blackwood Enterprises, had just sealed another victory. The Phoenix Corporation acquisition papers lay scattered across his mahogany desk like trophies of war. The silence of his penthouse office was sacred. Here, in this temple of ambition, Marcus orchestrated deals that moved markets and shaped destinies. Nothing interrupted his domain, nothing. Until today, Mr. Blackwood. The voice was small, uncertain. Marcus turned, his steel gray suit catching the afternoon light, to find his building's head of security standing awkwardly in the doorway. Behind him, two small figures peered out, twin girls with curly brown hair and bright green eyes that seemed strangely familiar. "Sir, these children." They convinced the lobby staff they were visiting their father. The girls stepped forward with the fearless confidence only 6-year-olds possessed. The more outgoing one with wild curly hair spoke first. "Hi Daddy, I'm Emma, and this is Sophie." She pointed to her quieter sister, whose straight hair framed a serious face. "Why did you fire Mummy?" The words hit Marcus like a physical blow. Those eyes emerald green, exactly like his own. The delicate features that stirred memories he'd buried deep. And then the name that escaped his lips in a whisper, Victoria Hayes. Emma nodded enthusiastically. "That's Mummy. She's been crying for 2 weeks since you fired her. We're eating noodles every day now, and she thinks we might have to move away." Sophie stepped closer, her voice barely audible. "Mummy said you're a good man who helps people, but if you're good, why did you make her sad?" Marcus felt his carefully constructed world tilting on its axis. 7 years ago, Victoria Hayes had been his most brilliant financial analyst and his most closely guarded secret. The woman who'd made him feel human again after his parents' death. The woman who'd vanished from his life without explanation, leaving only a resignation letter and a void that all his billions couldn't fill. Now, staring into the faces of these two little girls, his daughters, Marcus realized that some interruptions change everything. "How did you find me?" he managed to ask. Emma beamed proudly. "You were on TV. Mummy always watches when you're on the news. She says you're important." The security chief shifted uncomfortably. "Sir, should I call child services?" "No." Marcus's voice was firm, though his hands trembled slightly. "I'll handle this." He knelt down to meet the girls at eye level, his empire suddenly feeling very small compared to the magnitude of this moment. "Emma, Sophie," he said softly, "tell me about your mummy. Before we dive into this incredible story of family, secrets, and redemption, drop a comment below and tell us where you're watching from. You're about to witness a tale that will change everything you think you know about success and sacrifice. Enjoy the story. Chapter 1. The Empire and the INTO or OPTO. In the 52nd floor of the Blackwood Tower gleamed like a monument to power. Marcus Blackwood, 42 years old and worth $12 billion, stood behind his floor-to-ceiling windows watching Manhattan spread beneath him like a conquered kingdom. His empire, Blackwood Enterprises, had just sealed another victory. The Phoenix Corporation acquisition papers lay scattered across his mahogany desk like trophies of war. The silence of his penthouse office was sacred. Here, in this temple of ambition, Marcus orchestrated deals that moved markets and shaped destinies. Nothing interrupted his domain, nothing. Until today, Mr. Blackwood. The voice was small, uncertain. Marcus turned, his steel gray suit catching the afternoon light, to find his building's head of security standing awkwardly in the doorway. Behind him, two small figures peered out, twin girls with curly brown hair and bright green eyes that seemed strangely familiar. "Sir, these children." They convinced the lobby staff they were visiting their father. The girls stepped forward with the fearless confidence only 6-year-olds possessed. The more outgoing one with wild curly hair spoke first. "Hi Daddy, I'm Emma, and this is Sophie." She pointed to her quieter sister, whose straight hair framed a serious face. "Why did you fire Mummy?" The words hit Marcus like a physical blow. Those eyes emerald green, exactly like his own. The delicate features that stirred memories he'd buried deep. And then the name that escaped his lips in a whisper, Victoria Hayes. Emma nodded enthusiastically. "That's Mummy. She's been crying for 2 weeks since you fired her. We're eating noodles every day now, and she thinks we might have to move away." Sophie stepped closer, her voice barely audible. "Mummy said you're a good man who helps people, but if you're good, why did you make her sad?" Marcus felt his carefully constructed world tilting on its axis. 7 years ago, Victoria Hayes had been his most brilliant financial analyst and his most closely guarded secret. The woman who'd made him feel human again after his parents' death. The woman who'd vanished from his life without explanation, leaving only a resignation letter and a void that all his billions couldn't fill. Now, staring into the faces of these two little girls, his daughters, Marcus realized that some interruptions change everything. "How did you find me?" he managed to ask. Emma beamed proudly. "You were on TV. Mummy always watches when you're on the news. She says you're important." The security chief shifted uncomfortably. "Sir, should I call child services?" No. Marcus's voice was firm, though his hands trembled slightly. I'll handle this. He knelt down to meet the girls at eye level, his empire suddenly feeling very small compared to the magnitude of this moment. Emma, Sophie, he said softly, tell me about your mummy. Chapter 2. Confronting the PSD. The Brooklyn apartment building looked like a fortress of faded dreams. Marcus sat in his black Bentley for 10 minutes, staring at the weathered brick facade that housed the woman who'd haunted his thoughts for 7 years. Corporate records had led him here. Victoria Hayes, former senior financial analyst, current address, 847 Maple Street, apartment for B. His hands gripped the steering wheel. Through his investigations that afternoon, he'd learned she'd been terminated exactly 2 weeks ago. Budget cuts, the file said. But Marcus knew every department's numbers by heart. Victoria's division was profitable. The twins had returned home hours earlier with his security team, but their words echoed. Mummy cries at night when she thinks we're sleeping. Marcus climbed 4 flights of narrow stairs, each step heavier than the last. When he reached for B, he could hear muffled voices inside, a woman's frustrated tone and 2 smaller voices pleading. He knocked. The silence that followed was deafening. Then footsteps, slow and cautious. The door opened, and Marcus felt the air leave his lungs. Victoria Hayes stood before him, but not the Victoria he remembered. Gone was the sharp business attire and confident posture. This woman wore a faded sweater and jeans, her once perfect hair pulled back in a messy ponytail. Dark circles shadowed her eyes, and her face carried the weight of years he hadn't witnessed. But she was still beautiful. Still the woman who'd made him believe in something beyond balance sheets and profit margins. Marcus, her voice was barely a whisper. Victoria, he searched her face, looking for answers to 7 years of questions. We need to talk. She glanced back toward the apartment, where Emma and Sophie peeked around the corner. Girls, go to your room now, but Mommy now. The sharpness in Victoria's voice made both girls jump. Victoria stepped into the hallway, closing the door behind her. They stood facing each other in the dim fluorescent light. 2 people who'd once shared everything now feeling like strangers. How dare you, she whispered, her voice trembling with rage. How dare you let them go to your office alone? They're 6 years old, Marcus. They took the subway by themselves because they wanted to help their mummy. I didn't know, of course you didn't know. Victoria's composure cracked. You never wanted to know. You made that perfectly clear 7 years ago when I tried to tell you. Marcus felt confusion wash over him. Tell me what? You left Victoria. You disappeared without explanation. Victoria stared at him as if he'd struck her. I came to your office that day. I stood outside your door, gathering courage to tell you I was pregnant. And I heard you on the phone, telling someone that children were a distraction successful businessmen couldn't afford. The words hit Marcus like ice water. He remembered those days, the hostile takeover of Morrison Industries, the 8 days, the phone calls that blurred together in his memory. I may have said something like that, he admitted quietly. But if I had known, would it have mattered? Victoria's eyes filled with tears she refused to let fall. Would you have chosen us over your empire? Marcus opened his mouth to answer, but the words wouldn't come because deep down, looking at the man he'd been 7 years ago, he wasn't sure, and Victoria saw that uncertainty in his eyes. That's what I thought, she whispered, turning back toward her apartment door. But as her hand touched the handle, Marcus found his voice. Victoria, wait, let me prove you wrong. The Blackwood Enterprises building hummed with pre-dawn activity. As Marcus arrived at 5 a.m., his mind churning with questions that had kept him awake all night, Victoria's words echoed in his head. You never wanted to know, but something felt wrong about her termination. Marcus knew every budget cut, every restructuring decision, and Victoria's department had been thriving. He summoned his executive assistant, Margaret, a sharp woman in her 50s who'd been with the company for 20 years. Her loyalty was absolute, her discretion legendary. Margaret, I need the complete HR file on Victoria Hayes. Everything: performance reviews, termination documents, authorization signatures. Margaret's eyebrows rose slightly. Sir, that's highly irregular. Just do it. Marcus's tone brooked no argument. 30 minutes later, Margaret returned with a thick manila folder and a troubled expression. Sir, there's something you should see. Marcus opened the file, his blood growing colder with each page. Victoria's performance reviews were flawless, exceptional analytical skills, innovative risk assessment protocols, saved company $47 million through early detection of acquisition flaws. Her termination papers, however, told a different story. Departmental restructuring, signed by David Sterling, his CFO of 15 years, the man Marcus trusted above all others. Margaret, David Sterling authorized this termination personally. Yes, sir. He bypassed the standard review committee entirely. Marcus flipped through more documents, his hands trembling slightly. They're Victoria's final project before termination, a comprehensive audit of the Phoenix Corporation acquisition, the same acquisition currently sitting on his desk upstairs. Get me everything Victoria Hayes worked on in her final month. And Marcus looked up, his green eyes hard as emeralds. Not a word of this to anyone, especially Sterling. An hour later, Marcus sat surrounded by Victoria's work, detailed financial analyses that would have impressed Harvard professors. But one document made his blood run cold. A memo dated 3 days before her termination, flagging irregular offshore subsidiaries within Phoenix Corporation that require immediate investigation before proceeding with acquisition. Victoria had discovered something that threatened the Phoenix deal. His secure phone buzzed a text from his head of security. Package delivered, as requested. Marcus opened the sealed envelope containing the private investigation report he'd commissioned overnight. The contents shattered his understanding of everything. David Sterling had been monitoring Victoria Hayes for 2 years. The report contained surveillance photos. Victoria walking Emma and Sophie to school. The twins playing in Central Park, their apartment building, at various times of day. Sterling knew about his daughters, had known for years, but why? Marcus dug deeper into Sterling's background, using resources that few people possessed. What he found chilled him to the bone. David Sterling had a younger brother, Ryan Sterling, aged 24 at time of death 3 years ago. Caused suicide. The pieces began forming a terrifying picture. Marcus remembered. Ryan Sterling, a bright young entrepreneur with a promising tech startup. Marcus had destroyed that company systematically 8 years ago, viewing it as a potential threat to Blackwood's market position. He'd used insider information, predatory pricing, and financial warfare to crush Ryan's dreams. He'd never given the young man another thought until now. Marcus pulled up old news articles about Ryan's death. The suicide note, partially quoted in a tech blog, contained damning words. Marcus Blackwood destroyed everything I worked for. He took my future, my hope, my reason to believe in myself. A cold realization settled over Marcus like a shroud. David Sterling wasn't just his CFO, he was a grieving brother who'd spent years positioning himself for revenge. Victoria's termination wasn't about budget cuts or Phoenix Corporation irregularities, that it was the opening move in a carefully orchestrated plan to destroy Marcus Blackwood by taking away everything he'd never known he loved. Sterling had been watching Marcus's daughters for 2 years, waiting for the perfect moment to strike. And that moment was now. Marcus reached for his phone with shaking hands. He had to warn Victoria, but as he dialed, his office door opened without a knock. "Good morning, Marcus," David Sterling said smoothly, his smile cold as winter. "Working early today, I see. Anything interesting in those files?" The afternoon sun filtered through the oak trees of Central Park as Marcus waited on a bench near the playground, his hands clenched in his lap. He'd managed to deflect Sterling's suspicions that morning, but barely. Every shadow now seemed threatening, every passerby a potential spy. Victoria approached with Emma and Sophie, her posture guarded but her eyes holding a glimmer of something that might have been hope. The twins ran ahead to the swings, their laughter a stark contrast to the tension crackling between their parents. "You said you wanted to prove me wrong," Victoria said, sitting on the far end of the bench, maintaining careful distance. "I'm listening." Marcus watched their daughters play. Emma's fearless enthusiasm on the monkey bars while Sophie quietly collected interesting leaves. "They're beautiful, Victoria. They're perfect. They're not your redemption project, Marcus." He turned to face her fully. "No, they're not. They're my daughters. And I've already lost 7 years. I can never get back." His voice cracked slightly. "I need you to know what I said on that phone call 7 years ago. I was wrong. About everything." Victoria studied his face, searching for deception. "You don't even remember saying it, do you?" "No, I don't. But I believe you heard it, and I believe it drove you away. I was consumed by work then, by building something I thought mattered more than anything else." Marcus gestured toward the gleaming Manhattan skyline visible through the trees. "I built an empire, Victoria. But I built it on a foundation of loneliness, so what's changed?" Her voice was softer now, but still wary. "They changed me." Marcus nodded toward Emma and Sophie. "In 5 minutes, those 2 little girls showed me what I've been missing, what I threw away." He paused, struggling with words he'd never had to say before. "I want to be their father. Not just financially, I want to know their favorite colors, their fears, their dreams. I want to be the man you told them I was." Victoria felt her carefully constructed walls beginning to crack. "They think you're a hero. You know, every news, an article about your company's charity work, every business award I'd showed them everything. I wanted them to be proud of their father, even if he wasn't part of their lives." The admission hung between them like a bridge neither was quite ready to cross. "Mummy," Emma called out, hanging upside down from the monkey bars. "Look what I can do." Victoria waved, smiling despite the emotional turmoil. "She's just like you," she said quietly, fearless, confident, ready to take on the world. "And Sophie sees everything. She reads at a 4th grade level, asks questions that make me think for hours. She wants to be a scientist when she grows up." Marcus felt a pride he'd never experienced, deeper than any business triumph. "I want to know them, Victoria. Really know them. But more than that," he took a breath. "I want to know if there's any chance for us." Before Victoria could respond, Emma ran over, breathless with excitement. "Daddy, will you push me on the swing? Mummy says you're probably too busy, but I told her you'd want to." Marcus looked at Victoria, who nodded almost imperceptibly. As he walked with Emma toward the swings, he noticed a black sedan parked across the street, the same model he'd seen outside Victoria's apartment building the night before. David Sterling sat in the driver's seat, watching through tinted windows. Marcus's blood ran cold, but he forced himself to smile as he helped Emma onto the swing. "Hold on tight, sweetheart." As he pushed his daughter higher toward the sky, Marcus knew their fairy tale moment was being watched by someone who intended to destroy it all. But for now, listening to Emma's delighted squeals and seeing Victoria's cautious smile, he felt something he hadn't experienced in years. Hope. Higher. Daddy, I want to touch the clouds. Marcus pushed harder, his daughter soaring toward the sun. While shadows gathered around their newfound family, Victoria's apartment felt smaller, with Marcus's imposing presence filling the modest living room. He sat carefully on the worn couch, looking like a giant in a dollhouse, his expensive suit contrasting sharply with the second-hand furniture and children's drawings taped to the walls. "Welcome to our castle," Emma announced proudly, spreading her arms wide. "It's not as big as your tower, but Mommy says it has more love." Marcus's throat tightened. The apartment was tiny, but warm family photos covered every surface. Emma's colorful artwork brightened the walls, and Sophie's books were stacked in neat piles throughout the room. This was a home in ways his penthouse had never been. "Emma, show Daddy your robot drawings," Victoria suggested, her voice still cautious but gentler than it had been in the park. Emma rushed to retrieve a thick folder, her eyes shining with excitement. "These are my inventions. Mommy told me you build things that help people, so I made robots that help people too." Marcus examined each drawing with genuine fascination. There was HelperBot that cooked dinner for tired moms, HugBot that we gave comfort to sad children, and FixitBot that repaired broken toys. Each drawing was signed Emma Blackwood Hayes in careful 6-year-old handwriting. "She gave herself your last name," Victoria said quietly, noticing his surprise. "I never told her to, she just decided that's who she was." "And this one," Emma pointed to her favorite drawing, "is Daddy Bot. He comes home every night for dinner and reads bedtime stories and never misses important things like school plays." The innocent words hit Marcus like a physical blow. This was the father Emma had imagined, present, caring, available. Everything he'd never been. Sophie approached shyly, carrying a worn astronomy book. "Mommy says you went to Harvard. Do you know about stars?" Marcus accepted the book reverently, noting the library stamps and well-loved pages. "I studied business, sweetheart, but I'd love to learn about stars with you." For the next hour, Sophie shared her knowledge with the seriousness of a university professor, pointing out constellations and explaining black holes while Marcus listened with rapt attention. Victoria watched from the kitchen, her heart softening, as she saw this powerful man defer completely to a 6-year-old's expertise. "I have something for you both," Marcus said finally, retrieving 2 elegantly wrapped packages from his briefcase. Emma tore into hers immediately, gasping at the advanced robotics kit inside. "Real robot parts. I can build actual robots." Sophie, who opened hers more carefully, her eyes widening at the professional telescope. "This must have cost more than our rent," she whispered to her mother. "Sophie," Victoria scolded, embarrassed. "It's okay," Marcus said gently. "She's right to notice." "But Sophie, the cost doesn't matter. What matters is that you'll be able to see Jupiter's moons and Saturn's rings. Real exploration starts with the right tools." As evening approached, Victoria prepared their usual simple dinner: spaghetti with marinara sauce and garlic bread. Marcus insisted on helping, looking comically out of place in the tiny kitchen but determined to contribute. "When I was growing up," he said, stirring the sauce, "we had staff for everything. I never learned to cook, never had family dinners like this." "What was it like?" Victoria asked. "Being rich and powerful as a child." Marcus was quiet for a moment. "Lonely. My parents died when I was 12, car accident. After that, it was just me, housekeepers, and eventually boarding school. I built Blackwood Enterprises partly to honor their memory, but mostly to fill the silence." During dinner, Emma regaled them with stories from school while Sophie quietly observed the new family dynamic. Marcus hung on every word, asking questions about teachers, friends, favorite subjects. When Emma mentioned their upcoming school play, Marcus immediately asked for the date. "You'll probably be too busy," Emma said matter-of-factly. "Mommy says important businessmen have very full calendars." "Emma," Marcus said seriously, "I want you to understand something. Nothing, no meeting, no deal, no amount of money is more important than watching you be a tree in your school play." Emma beamed while Sophie studied her father with new interest. At Marcus prepared to leave, he noticed a framed newspaper clipping on Victoria's dresser, the Business Journal article about his company's educational charity donations. "You kept this?" Victoria blushed. "I kept everything, every article, every interview. I wanted the girls to know their father was someone they could be proud of." Standing at the door, Marcus felt a completeness he'd never experienced. "Thank you for that, for keeping me alive in their hearts when I didn't deserve it." Marcus, Victoria said softly as he stepped into the hallway. I'm willing to try. For them, and maybe for us. As Marcus walked to his car, he didn't notice the black sedan following at a distance, or the telephoto lens capturing every moment of his first evening as a father. The Monday morning board meeting droned on with quarterly reports and acquisition updates. Marcus sat at the head of the polished conference table, his mind split between Phoenix Corporation projections and memories of Emma's laughter echoing through Victoria's small apartment. The Phoenix deal should close by month's end, David Sterling announced, his voice smooth as silk. All final audits are complete. Marcus's attention snapped back to the present. What about the offshore subsidiary concerns? Sterling's expression didn't change, but Marcus caught the microscopic pause. Minor accounting discrepancies. Nothing that affects the overall valuation. After the meeting, Sterling lingered as the other executives filed out. Marcus, you seem distracted lately. Everything all right? Just tired? David, long hours. You know how it is, of course. Sterling's smile felt predatory now that Marcus knew what to look for. By the way, I happened to see Victoria Hayes at the grocery store yesterday. Lovely woman. Those twin daughters of hers are adorable. The casual mention hit Marcus like ice water. Sterling was telling him he knew had always known. Really, Marcus kept his voice neutral. Small world indeed. Amazing how some people from our past just resurfaced unexpectedly. Sterling's eyes glittered with hidden meaning. I always wondered why she left so suddenly years ago. Pregnant. Women can be so emotional about workplace decisions. The words were a dagger wrapped in silk. Sterling knew about the pregnancy, the twins, everything. Had known for years while Marcus remained oblivious. That afternoon, Marcus called his most trusted private investigator, former FBI agent named Catherine Walsh, who specialized in corporate espionage. I need everything on David Sterling. Financial records, personal history, family connections, communication patterns. Everything. That's a tall order, Mr. Blackwood. Sterling's been your CFO for 15 years, especially because he's been my CFO for 15 years. I need it yesterday. Catherine. 24 hours later, Catherine arrived at Marcus's penthouse with a thick file and a grim expression. Mr. Blackwood, what I found is disturbing. Sterling has been systematically building a financial network outside Blackwood Enterprises for the past 5 years. Shell companies, offshore accounts, partnerships with Phoenix Corporation executives that predate your acquisition talks by 18 months. Marcus's blood chilled as Catherine spread documents across his dining table. It gets worse. Sterling has been monitoring multiple former Blackwood employees, not just Victoria Hayes. Anyone who left the company under questionable circumstances, anyone who might have information that could damage you or the company. Catherine pulled out a newspaper clipping, Ryan Sterling's obituary from 3 years ago. David Sterling had a younger brother. Brilliant kid. Started a tech company that showed real promise until I destroyed it. Marcus finished quietly. According to my sources, Ryan Sterling's final months were brutal. His startup's failure led to personal bankruptcy, clinical depression, and ultimately suicide. His final note specifically mentioned you by name. Marcus felt the walls closing in around him. David's been planning this for years, it appears so. The Phoenix acquisition is the centerpiece. It's designed to bankrupt Blackwood Enterprises through hidden debt obligations. Sterling will profit from shorting your stock while simultaneously destroying your reputation through carefully leaked information about your secret family. He's using my daughters as weapons. Catherine nodded grimly. Mr. Blackwood, there's something else. Sterling has hired a private security firm, former military contractors. Based on their recent activities, I believe he's escalating beyond financial warfare. Marcus's phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. Enjoying fatherhood. Family is precious. So easily lost. Catherine saw his expression change. Sir, Marcus showed her the message. He's not just coming for my company, he's coming for Victoria and the girls. We need to contact the police. No, Marcus's voice was steel. The police can't protect them from someone with Sterling's resources and connections. I need to handle this myself. Mr. Blackwood, this man has been planning your destruction for years. He's patient, methodical, and clearly unstable. You're not equipped to. Marcus's phone rang. Victoria's name flashed on the screen. Marcus, her voice was shaky. Someone's been following Emma and Sophie to school. The principal called her. Man in a black car has been parked outside the building 3 days in a row, taking pictures. Marcus closed his eyes, feeling the net tightening around his family. Victoria, listen to me carefully. Pack a bag for you and the girls. I'm sending my security team to get you right now. What's happening? David Sterling is not who I thought he was, and he's decided to use our family to destroy me. In the silence that followed, Marcus could hear Emma and Sophie playing in the background, their innocent laughter a stark contrast to the danger closing in around them. How long do we have? Victoria whispered. Marcus looked at Catherine, who was studying Sterling's psychological profile with growing concern. Not long, he answered. Not long at all. The confrontation Marcus had been dreading came at 6 p.m. sharp. David Sterling entered Marcus's office without knocking, his usual practiced smile replaced by something far more dangerous. "We need to talk," Sterling said, closing the door behind him with deliberate precision. Marcus had spent the afternoon preparing for this moment, but facing his longtime friend and betrayer still felt surreal. "About what, David?" "About the fact that you've been investigating me." Sterling moved to the window, gazing out at the Manhattan skyline with his hands clasped behind his back. "Did you really think I wouldn't notice? Private investigators, financial audits, security sweeps of my office. You've been watching my family." Sterling turned slowly, his mask finally slipping completely. "Your family? That's rich." Marcus discovered their existence 5 days ago, and suddenly they're your family. "They're my daughters, they're weapons." Sterling's voice cracked like a whip. "Perfect, innocent weapons in a war you started 8 years ago when you destroyed my brother." Marcus felt the temperature in the room drop. Ryan Sterling, age 24. Brilliant mind, innovative spirit, boundless potential. The voice was eerily calm now. "You remember him, don't you? The young entrepreneur whose company you systematically destroyed because it posed a theoretical threat to your market share." "David, business is what?" "Marcus, just business." Sterling laughed bitterly. "You used insider information, from banking contacts to block his funding. You launched a smear campaign questioning his mental stability. You initiated a price war specifically designed to bankrupt his startup before it could gain traction." Marcus remained silent, knowing every accusation was true. "But that wasn't enough, was it?" Sterling continued. "You had to grind him into dust. Patent lawsuits that drained his savings, corporate espionage that stole his innovations. You didn't just beat him, you humiliated him. I didn't know it would lead to suicide." Sterling's eyes blazed with 8 years of accumulated hatred. "My baby brother put a gun to his head because Marcus Blackwood decided he was inconvenient." Asterisk, his final note said, and I quote, "Marcus Blackwood showed me that dreams are just illusions rich men crush for sport." The words hung in the air like poison. "David, I'm sorry. If you had known what that actions have consequences. That destroying someone's life might push them to despair." Sterling pulled out his phone, showing Marcus a photo of Ryan's grave. "I visit him every week, Marcus, every week for 3 years. I've promised him justice." "So you orchestrated all of this? Victoria's termination, the Phoenix acquisition, monitoring my daughters. Oh, it goes deeper than that." Sterling's smile returned, cold and predatory. "Do you want to know how long I've been planning this? I applied to be your CFO specifically, for revenge. 15 years ago, I was no but just David Sterling, recent MBA graduate with a dead brother and an unquenchable thirst for payback." The revelation hit Marcus like a physical blow. 15 years I built your trust, your empire, your fortune, all while planning its destruction. Every successful deal, every strategic victory, every moment you thought I was your loyal friend, I was positioning pieces on a chessboard you didn't even know existed. Marcus felt his world tilting. "The Phoenix acquisition will bankrupt you within 6 months. Hidden debt, toxic assets, environmental liabilities enough to destroy Blackwood Enterprises completely." But financial ruin wasn't enough. Sterling's expression turned savage. "I needed you to experience real loss. The kind of devastating personal loss that drives someone to despair. You're talking about murdering innocent children. I'm talking about justice." Sterling slammed his hand on the desk. "You took my brother's future, his hope, his will to live. Now I'm going to take yours." Marcus stood slowly, his hands trembling with rage. "If you touch my daughters, you'll what? Call the police, sue me, fire me." Sterling laughed. "Marcus, I've been 3 steps ahead of you for 15 years. I have dirt on half your board members, financial leverage over your key investors, and enough insider information to destroy your reputation permanently." He moved toward the door, then paused. "Oh, and Marcus, that security team you sent to protect Victoria and the girls. 3 of them have been on my payroll for 2 years. The door closed with a soft click, leaving Marcus alone with the horrifying realization that his family was already in enemy hands. His phone rang. "Victoria's number, Marcus." Her voice was strangely calm. "A man named David Sterling is here. He says you sent him to keep us safe." Marcus's blood turned to ice. "Victoria, get out of there now." "I can't," she whispered. "He has Emma and Sophie." Marcus's penthouse had never felt more like a war room. Victoria sat across from him at the dining table, her face pale but determined, while Emma and Sophie slept in the guest bedroom down the hall. They had escaped Sterling's trap by mere minutes. Victoria's quick thinking and a fire escape had saved them when Sterling's men came to escort them to safety. "Tell me everything," Marcus said, his voice steady despite the terror coursing through his veins. Victoria wrapped her hands around a cup of coffee, trying to stop their trembling. "Sterling arrived with 2 men, claiming you'd sent them something. It felt wrong. They knew too much about our daily routine, where the girls went to school, what time I picked them up." She paused, reliving the fear. "When I asked to call you first, one of them moved to block the door. How did you get out?" The fire escape in Sophie's bedroom. I told them I needed to pack the girls' medications, grabbed Emma and Sophie, and we climbed down 4 flights of rusty metal stairs. Victoria's voice cracked slightly. Emma thought it was an adventure. Sophie knew something was terribly wrong. Marcus reached across the table, covering her hand with his. You saved them. You saved our daughters. The word "our" hung between them, carrying weight neither had acknowledged before. Marcus, who is David Sterling really, and why does he want to hurt us? For the next hour, Marcus revealed everything: Ryan Sterling's suicide, David's 15-year infiltration, the Phoenix acquisition trap, the surveillance, the systematic planning. Victoria listened in growing horror as the scope of obsession became clear. He destroyed that young man's life, Victoria said finally. But Marcus, you destroyed his brother first. The words hit like a physical blow. I know. Do you really understand what you did? Victoria's voice carried 8 years of suppressed anger. You didn't just ruin a business, Marcus. You systematically crushed a human being's spirit until he chose death over living in the world you created for him. Marcus looked down at his hands that had signed contracts, authorized hostile takeovers, destroyed lives from behind mahogany desks. I told myself it was just business, competition, natural selection in the corporate world. And now, I see Ryan Sterling's face every time I look at Emma and Sophie. I see what I did to someone else's family, someone else's hope. Marcus met Victoria's eyes. I can't change the past, Victoria, but I can try to prevent Sterling from perpetuating the cycle. Victoria studied his face, searching for deception, for the cold calculation she remembered from their corporate days. Instead, she saw genuine remorse and desperate love for their children. What do? We fight back. But not the way I used to fight, not by destroying everything in our path. Marcus pulled out a thick folder. Sterling's plan depends on secrecy, on maintaining his position inside Blackwood Enterprises while orchestrating the collapse. If we expose him publicly, reveal his motives and methods, we neutralize his advantage. He'll retaliate against the girls, which is why we're not doing this alone. Marcus showed her documents Catherine Walsh had compiled. Sterling made one crucial mistake. He's so focused on revenge that he's left a trail of evidence spanning 15 years. Financial unauthorized surveillance, the Phoenix conspiracy. We have enough to destroy him legally. Victoria examined the papers, her analytical mind engaging despite the emotional chaos. This could work, but we need more than documentation. We need testimony from inside witnesses, people willing to stand up against someone who's been accumulating power for 15 years. I have something better. Marcus pulled out his phone, showing her a recording app. Sterling confessed everything in my office today. His motives, his timeline, his threats against our family. It's all recorded. That's illegal wiretapping. It's a father protecting his children. Marcus's voice was steel. I don't care about legal technicalities anymore, Victoria. I care about making sure Emma and Sophie are safe. Victoria saw the transformation in him, the corporate shark becoming a protective father, willing to sacrifice his empire to save his family. It was the man she'd fallen in love with 8 years ago, finally freed from the prison of his own ambition. All right, she said quietly. We do this together. But Marcus, after we stop Sterling, we need to talk about who you were and who you want to become. I want to become the man our daughters think I am. From down the hall came Emma's sleepy voice. Mommy, Daddy, I had a bad dream. Marcus and Victoria looked at each other, united now by purpose and love. Whatever came next, they would face it as a family. Coming, sweetheart, Victoria called out as they walked toward their daughter's room. Neither noticed the small drone hovering outside the penthouse windows, its camera recording every word they'd spoken. The emergency board meeting convened at 8 a.m. sharp, every member present despite the short notice. Marcus sat at the head of the table with Victoria beside him, no longer hiding their relationship or their children's existence. Emma and Sophie waited in his private office, drawing pictures while his most trusted security guards watched over them. Ladies and gentlemen, Marcus began, his voice carrying the authority of $12 billion and 15 years of leadership. I'm here to expose a conspiracy that threatens the very foundation of Blackwood Enterprises. The presentation was devastating. Marcus and Victoria methodically revealed Sterling's 15-year infiltration, the Phoenix acquisition trap, the surveillance of employees, and the systematic planning of the company's destruction. The recorded confession played Sterling's own words back to the stunned board members. Board member Patricia Chen was the first to speak. My God, Marcus Lee's been sitting in these meetings for 15 years, planning our destruction. Where is Sterling now? Asked Thomas Wright, the longest-serving board member. Asterisk security is searching for him. Marcus replied. He disappeared yesterday after our confrontation. The vote was unanimous. David Sterling was terminated immediately, stripped of all authority, and banned from company property. Marcus authorized full cooperation with law enforcement, and within hours, federal agents were pursuing Sterling for corporate fraud, conspiracy, and terrorist threats. But Sterling had one final card to play. At 2 p.m. As the board meeting concluded, Marcus's assistant rushed in with a tablet showing breaking news alerts. Every major financial network was running the same story. Billionaire, CEOs, secret daughters, scandal rocks, Wall Street. The leaked information was precise and damaging. Marcus Blackwood had hidden the existence of twin daughters from shareholders, used company resources for personal surveillance, and engaged in a romantic relationship with a subordinate employee. The financial markets reacted instantly. Blackwood Enterprises stock plummeted 15% in the first hour of trading, but worse than the financial damage was the human cost. Outside Victoria's apartment building, news vans lined the street. Photographers with telephoto lenses waited at Emma and Sophie's school. Social media exploded with speculation and cruel commentary about the billionaire's bastard children. "We can't go home," Victoria said, staring at the live news footage of reporters camped outside their building. "The girls can't go to school. We're prisoners of our own story." Marcus watched his daughters through the glass partition of his office. Emma was trying to maintain her usual cheerfulness, but kept glancing nervously at the adults' tense faces. Sophie sat quietly, understanding more than anyone wanted her to. "They don't deserve this," Marcus said quietly. "They're 6 years old. They didn't ask to be part of this war." His phone rang. Catherine Walsh, his investigator. "Mr. Blackwood, I have bad news. Sterling made bail an hour ago. $10 million. Paid by an offshore investment firm we can't trace." Marcus felt ice in his veins. "He's free. Not only free, but my sources say he's hired additional security personnel, former military contractors with questionable ethics." "Sir, I think he's escalating beyond legal warfare." "What do you mean?" "I mean he's moving to physical confrontation. My contacts in federal law enforcement are taking this seriously now. But Sterling has resources and connections we're still discovering." Marcus looked at Victoria, who was trying to comfort Emma after the little girl asked why mean people were saying bad things about their family on television. "Catherine, I need options. My daughters can't live like this. There's a federal safe house program for high-value witnesses. No, I won't hide my family away like criminals because Sterling to want revenge." Marcus's voice hardened with resolve. "What about offensive options?" "Sir, I can't recommend vigilante action. I'm not talking about vigilante action. I'm talking about ending this threat permanently and legally. The only way to stop Sterling completely is to force him into a position where he has no choice but to surrender or face consequences he can't escape." "But Mr. Blackwood, that would require using your family as bait." Marcus looked through the glass at Emma, who was showing Sophie her latest robot drawing, a protector bot that she'd labeled "keeps families safe." The innocence in their faces strengthened his resolve. "Set it up," he said quietly. "Sir, Sterling wants to destroy my family to get revenge for his brother. Let's give him that opportunity, but on our terms, in a place where we control every variable." Victoria overheard and grabbed his arm. "Marcus, no, we're not risking the girls' lives." "We're not risking them," Marcus said firmly. "We're ending this threat before Sterling decides that financial and social destruction isn't enough revenge." He turned back to the phone. "Catherine, I want you to find me the perfect trap." Outside, the media circus continued to grow, but Marcus was no longer watching the news. He was planning the final confrontation that would determine whether his family lived in fear or walked free. The war Sterling had started 15 years ago was about to reach its end. The helicopter swept over the Atlantic coastline as Emma pressed her face to the window, her eyes wide with wonder. "Look, Sophie, the ocean goes on forever." Sophie managed a small smile, though she'd been unusually quiet since the bad men with cameras had surrounded their apartment building. Victoria sat between the twins, one protective arm around each daughter, while Marcus coordinated security arrangements on his encrypted phone. The Hamptons estate sprawled across 50 acres of pristine coastline, its main house a testament to old money and careful planning. Marcus had inherited the property from his parents but rarely visited. Too many childhood memories of loneliness echoed through its halls. "This is where you lived when you were little?" Emma asked as they touched down on the private helipad. "Until I was 12, Marcus replied, helping her down from the helicopter. "After my parents died, I went to boarding school. I haven't spent much time here since." The mansion was breathtaking, 3 stories of weathered stone and hand woodwork, surrounded by manicured gardens that led down to a private beach. But what captured the girls' attention immediately was the massive library visible through French doors, floor-to-ceiling books on 2 levels, connected by a spiral, a staircase that seemed to climb into the clouds. "It's like the library from Beauty and the Beast," Sophie whispered. Awestruck, Victoria felt her heart clench watching Marcus observe his daughter's reactions. This had been his childhood home, but looking at it through their eyes, she could see how isolated and lonely it must have been for a young boy rattling around in rooms designed for entertaining dozens of guests. "There's a stable out back," Marcus said, trying to sound casual, "and a swimming pool, tennis court, and about 20 rooms to explore. The beach is private, completely safe." Over the next few hours, the family began to settle into an unfamiliar rhythm. Emma discovered the pool and declared herself part mermaid, while Sophie found a telescope in the observatory tower and spent an hour identifying constellations she'd only read about in books. That evening, Marcus grilled hamburgers on the terrace, while Victoria helped the girls collect seashells on the beach. Watching them through the gathering dusk, he felt something he'd never experienced: complete contentment mixed with fierce protectiveness. "You're different here," Victoria said, joining him as the girls built sandcastles near the water's edge. "This place holds every memory I have of being part of a family," Marcus replied. "My parents used to throw parties here, big, elaborate affairs with important people. But some of my best memories are the quiet moments between events, when it was just the three of us." "What happened to them?" Marcus was quiet for a long moment. "Car accident on the way back from the city. I was at boarding school when I got the call. After that, this house became a mausoleum, beautiful, perfectly preserved, and utterly empty." Victoria watched Emma teaching Sophie how to dig a moat around their sandcastle. Their laughter carried on the ocean breeze. "It doesn't feel empty now." "No," Marcus agreed. "It feels like home." Later, after the girls had been tucked into bed in adjoining rooms overlooking the ocean, Marcus and Victoria sat on the terrace sharing a bottle of wine and watching the stars emerge over the Atlantic. "I keep waiting for the other shoe to drop," Victoria admitted. "This feels too perfect, too peaceful. Sterling is still out there, and we both know he's not finished." Marcus's secure phone buzzed with an update from Catherine Walsh. Sterling had been spotted in the Hamptons area that afternoon, along with several unidentified associates. Local law enforcement had been quietly alerted, but Sterling's team was staying just outside legal boundaries. "He's circling," Marcus said, not sharing the specific details. "But Victoria, I need you to know something. Whatever happens next, these past few days with you and the girls have been the happiest of my life." "Marcus, I spent 15 years building an empire, thinking that success was measured in dollars and market dominance." But watching Emma's face light up when she saw that library, seeing Sophie's excitement about the telescope, sharing dinner with my family, this is what success actually looks like. Victoria reached for his hand. "You're not the same man I worked for 8 years ago." That man was hollow, driven, successful, but hollow. Marcus intertwined their fingers. "Our daughters, that saved me, Victoria. You saved me." From inside the house came Emma's voice calling out from a bad dream. Without hesitation, both parents rose to comfort her, moving as a united team. But as they walked toward the house, neither noticed the infrared cameras positioned in the tree line or the small team of figures moving through the darkness toward the estate's perimeter. Sterling's final gambit was about to begin, and the sanctuary they'd found would soon become the battlefield where everything would be decided. The last peaceful night the Blackwood family would know for some time was coming to an end. The grandfather clock in the library chimed midnight as Marcus found Victoria in his study, surrounded by old documents and nursing a glass of wine. Her face was pale, her hands trembling slightly as she read through papers he'd pulled from his personal files. "I couldn't sleep," she said without looking up, "so I decided to understand exactly who you were before all this started." Marcus felt his stomach drop. The files contained everything: Ryan Sterling's business plans, the systematic destruction Marcus had orchestrated, the cold calculations that had driven a young man to suicide. Victoria, he was 24 years old. Marcus, her voice was hollow. His company was called Innovation Labs. He wanted to develop affordable technology for disabled children. Marcus sank into the chair across from her, feeling the weight of his past settling like a stone in his chest. "I know. Do you really know what you destroyed?" Victoria held up a photograph from Ryan's business plan, a prototype device designed to help paralyzed children communicate through eye movements. "This wasn't some corporate threat, Marcus. This was a young man trying to help people. I told myself it was just business competition. You used insider banking information to destroy his funding. You launched patent challenges you knew were baseless but expensive to fight. You spread rumors about his mental stability to investors." Victoria's voice cracked. "You didn't just beat him, you systematically humiliated him until he saw death as his only escape." Marcus stared at his hands, the same hands that had signed the documents authorizing Ryan's destruction. "I was different then. Were you? Or are you just telling yourself that because now you have something to lose?" The question hung between them like poison. Victoria set down the wine glass and looked directly at him. "I need to know, Marcus, if Emma and Sophie didn't exist, if I had never come back into your life, would you feel any remorse for what you did to Ryan Sterling?" The silence stretched between them, filled only by the ocean waves crashing against the rocks below. Marcus wanted to lie, wanted to give her the answer that would preserve their fragile peace. But looking into Victoria's eyes, he couldn't. "I don't know," he said finally. "I want to believe I would have eventually seen the truth about who I'd become. But honestly, Victoria, I don't know if I would have changed without you and the girls forcing me to." Victoria felt something break inside her chest. "So you're not really different. You're just motivated differently. Maybe that's all any of us can be, people motivated by love instead of fear." by connection instead of conquest. Marcus met her eyes. I can't change who I was, Victoria, but I can choose who I want to be going forward. Before Victoria could respond, the house's security system chimed softly. Someone had breached the perimeter. The next morning brought deceptive tranquility. Emma and Sophie played on the private beach, their laughter mixing with seagull calls while Marcus and Victoria watched from the terrace. The conversation from the night before hung between them like an unfinished sentence, but both parents had silently agreed to preserve this moment of peace for their daughters. Look what I found. Emma ran up from the shoreline holding a perfectly intact sand dollar. Sophie says it's good luck. It means the ocean wants to be friends with us, Sophie added quietly, her serious eyes studying the delicate shell. Marcus knelt to examine their treasure, but his attention was divided. His secure phone had been buzzing with increasingly urgent messages from Catherine Walsh. Sterling had been spotted at 3 different locations around the Hamptons overnight, a coordinated surveillance pattern that suggested preparation for something significant. Daddy, will you teach us to sail? Emma asked, pointing to the small yacht moored at their private dock. Maybe tomorrow, sweetheart, Marcus replied, his eyes scanning the tree line for any sign of movement. Victoria noticed his tension. Girls, why don't you go build that fairy castle we talked about? Use those pretty shells you collected. As the twins ran back toward the beach, Victoria moved closer to Marcus. What aren't you telling me? Sterling's been watching us. My security team detected surveillance equipment in the forest last night, but when they investigated, they found only empty mounting brackets. Professional-grade equipment, removed before we could trace it. He's planning something. The question is what? Marcus showed her the latest message from Catherine. Federal agents report. Sterling's team has acquired night vision equipment, rope, and electronic jamming devices. Recommend immediate relocation. Victoria felt ice in her veins. We need to leave now. Where would we go, Victoria? He's had 15 years to plan this. Anywhere we run, he'll be waiting. Marcus watched Emma and Sophie building elaborate sand structures, their innocent joy a stark contrast to the danger closing around them. But maybe that's exactly what he wants, to keep us running, keep us afraid, until we make a mistake. So what do? We end this tonight. Marcus's voice carried the steel that had built his empire. Sterling wants a final confrontation. Let's give him one, but on our terms. From the beach, Emma called out, Mommy, Daddy, come see our castle. It has a moat and everything. Victoria grabbed Marcus's arm. We're not using our daughters as bait. We're not. But Sterling doesn't know that. Marcus looked at the yacht bobbing gently in the harbor. Tonight, after the girls were asleep, we're going to give Sterling exactly what he thinks he wants, the chance to destroy my family. But as they walked down to admire their daughter's sandcastle masterpiece, neither parent noticed the small drone hovering motionless among the pine trees or the thermal imaging camera recording their every movement. Sterling's endgame was already in motion. The attack came at 2:17 a.m. Marcus jolted awake to the sound of his security system dying, not an alarm, but the distinctive electronic whine of sophisticated jamming equipment cutting their connection to the outside world. Through the bedroom window, he could see 6 dark figures moving across the moonlit lawn with military precision. Victoria, he whispered urgently, shaking her awake. They're here. She was instantly alert, the mother's instinct for danger overriding any lingering sleep. The girls' safe room. Now they moved quickly through the darkened hallway to Emma and Sophie's room. The twins were still sleeping peacefully, unaware that their sanctuary had become a trap. Marcus gently lifted Emma while Victoria gathered Sophie, both children stirring but not fully waking. The safe room was hidden behind a bookshelf in the library. Marcus's father had installed it during the Cold War, complete with independent air supply and communication equipment. But as they reached the library, Sterling's voice echoed through the house's intercom system. Marcus, there's no point hiding. I control the security system now. Every camera, every lock, every escape route. Sterling's tone was eerily calm. Bring your family to the main library. We're going to finish what you started 8 years ago. Emma woke fully in her father's arms, confused and frightened. Daddy, why are there scary voices? It's okay, sweetheart, Marcus whispered, though his heart was pounding. We're playing a game, remember? Like hide and seek. Sophie, more perceptive, looked around with wide, frightened eyes. The bad man found us, didn't he? Before Marcus could answer, the lights blazed on throughout the house. Sterling stood in the library's main entrance with 5 armed men, his face a mask of controlled rage and years of accumulated hatred. Hello, Marcus, Victoria girl. Sterling's voice was almost conversational. Thank you for making this so easy. Isolated location, no neighbors for miles. Communication systems disabled. Perfect conditions for a family tragedy. Victoria instinctively moved to shield the twins, but Sterling's men had positioned themselves to cover every exit. What do you want, David? Marcus asked, though he already knew the answer. I want you to experience what my brother experienced. A slow realization that everything you love is being taken away, piece by piece, until death seems like mercy. Sterling's mask slipped, revealing the raw pain underneath. Ryan called me the night he died. Marcus said you'd shown him that some people are just born to be crushed by others. Emma started crying softly, finally understanding this wasn't a game. Sophie pressed closer to Victoria, her small hand gripping her mother's nightgown. "They're innocent children," Victoria said, her voice steady, despite her terror. "Whatever Marcus did to your brother, they had nothing to do with it." "Neither did Ryan," Sterling replied coldly. "But that didn't stop your husband from destroying him." He gestured to his men. "Separate them. I want Marcus to watch his family disappear the same way Ryan watched his dreams die." Marcus stepped forward, his hands raised. "David, please. Take me. Kill me, but let them go." Sterling smiled for the first time, and it was the most terrifying expression Marcus had ever seen. "Oh, Marcus. That would be too easy. Too quick." Sterling nodded to his men. "We're going to take our time." Sterling forced the family deeper into the library, his men keeping weapons trained on Victoria and the twins while he faced Marcus directly. The room that had once been Marcus's childhood refuge now felt like a tomb, lined with thousands of books that had witnessed generations of Blackwood family history. "This is fitting," Sterling said, gesturing at the towering shelves. "Your family's legacy of destroying others, documented in leather and gold." He pulled out a worn photograph Ryan at 22, smiling and full of hope. "My brother loved books too. He was going to write about his innovations, help other young entrepreneurs, avoid the traps that corporate creditors set." Marcus accepted full responsibility. "I'll transfer everything to you, David. Every asset, every company share. Just let them go." "Money," Sterling laughed bitterly. "You think this is about money?" His voice broke with 8 years of suppressed grief. Ryan died believing he was worthless because Marcus Blackwood decided he was inconvenient. No amount of money brings back someone who chose death over living in your shadow. Emma whispered to Sophie, "I'm scared." Sophie squeezed her sister's hand. Both girls pressed against Victoria's sides. "Please," Victoria begged. "They're babies. They don't understand any of this." Sterling's expression hardened as he looked at the twins. "Then let me help them understand." He raised his weapon toward Emma. "This is what happens when powerful men decide other people don't matter." Marcus exploded forward, tackling Sterling as the gun discharged into the ceiling. They crashed into the bookshelf, hundreds of volumes tumbling down as they fought desperately. Sterling was younger, trained and fueled by years of hatred, but Marcus fought with the desperate strength of a father protecting his children. The struggle was brutal and desperate. Two men grappling for a weapon while Victoria shielded the twins, and Sterling's men hesitated, unable to get a clear shot without risking their employer. Marcus managed to pin Sterling briefly, but the younger man twisted free, blood streaming from his nose. "You can't win this, Marcus. Even if you kill me, you'll always be the man who destroyed my brother." "You're right," Marcus gasped, struggling to his feet. "But I can make sure my daughters never become what I was." The final moments came quickly, Sterling lunging with a knife, Marcus deflecting the blade, both men crashing through the libraries, glass doors onto the terrace overlooking the ocean. When the federal agents arrived 20 minutes later, drawn by the gunshot and emergency beacon Victoria had managed to activate, they found Sterling unconscious but breathing, Marcus holding his family on the library floor, and two little girls who would need years of therapy to understand why the world had tried to destroy their happiness. But they were alive, they were together, and for Marcus Blackwood, that was victory enough. 18 months later, the same Hamptons estate that had witnessed terror now celebrated love. White chairs lined the beach where Emma and Sophie had once built sandcastles in fear, now filled with friends and family gathering for Marcus and Victoria's wedding. David Sterling served life in federal prison for kidnapping, terrorism and conspiracy. The Phoenix Corporation scandal had been exposed, saving Blackwood Enterprises from financial ruin while establishing new industry standards for corporate transparency. But Marcus's greatest transformation wasn't professional, it was personal. The Ryan Sterling Memorial Foundation had awarded its 50th scholarship that morning, providing young entrepreneurs with funding and mentorship that Sterling's brother had never received. Marcus personally met with each recipient, sharing his story as both cautionary tale and promise of redemption. "Daddy, your tie is crooked," Emma announced, adjusting his bow tie with 8-year-old precision. She wore a pale blue dress and carried herself with the confidence of a child who knew she was deeply loved. Sophie, quieter but equally radiant, handed him a small card. "I wrote you a poem for today," she said shyly. The carefully printed words spoke of families that grow stronger after storms, of fathers who choose love over power, and of second chances that bloom like flowers after winter. Victoria appeared, in her wedding dress, not the elaborate gown of a billionaire's bride, but a simple, elegant design that reflected the woman who had chosen substance over spectacle. She looked radiant, her eyes bright with the joy of a woman who had found her way home. "Ready?" she asked Marcus, taking his arm. "I've been ready for 8 years," he replied. "I just didn't know it yet." As they walked down the aisle between their guests, Marcus caught sight of Ryan Sterling's photograph at the memorial table, young man whose death had ultimately led to his killer's redemption. The cycle of destruction had been broken, replaced by a commitment to build rather than destroy. Emma and Sophie scattered flower petals ahead of their parents, their laughter mixing with ocean waves and wedding music. They were no longer the frightened children who had hidden in a library while adults fought over the sins of the past. They were the future, bright and full of possibility. When the minister asked for vows, Marcus spoke words he'd written in the quiet moments after the nightmare ended. Victoria, you and our daughters didn't just save my life, you showed me what life was for. I promise to spend every day earning the love you've given so freely. Victoria's response was simple. Marcus, you've shown me that people can change, that love can heal even the deepest wounds, and that the best stories end not with victory over enemies, but with the courage to become who we were always meant to be. They kissed beneath the sunset sky, surrounded by their daughters and friends. Marcus Blackwood felt something he'd never experienced in 44 years of life. Complete peace. The empire he'd built still stood, but it no longer defined him. The man who had once destroyed lives had learned to create them instead. And the family that had begun with 2 frightened children appearing in his office had become the foundation for everything that truly mattered. Sometimes, redemption comes not through grand gestures, but through the simple choice to love more than you fear, to build more than you destroy, and to remember that the greatest victories are measured not in dollars conquered, but in hearts healed.